So it's 5:30. We'll give it a couple more minutes for some more people to join us. I'm going to go ahead and start my presentation. Okay. Hopefully everybody can see that.
You can catch your PowerPoint, you should be good.
Hello, Malika. Hi.
Okay. Doesn't look like anybody else is jumping on real quick. So we'll go ahead and get started. And if they join us, we can circle back to anything. Welcome. Good evening. This is the 96th Avenue Neighborhood Streets Program meeting. If you accidentally clicked into this, feel free to listen. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and get started. So there we go. All right, real quick agenda for tonight. We're going to go through just a few things, an introduction, some rules. You're going to get a brief overview of the NSP. If you've been with talking to me before, or been on 96th Avenue long enough, I know you guys have been through the program before. This is mostly meant for the new people and to go over some recent changes that we made. So I know, I get it. This isn't exactly what you're hoping for. What you probably are all interested in is what we're going to get to at the very end, which is talking specifically about your neighborhood, your issues, and what we can do about that. So we'll get to all that stuff at the end. For those of you that did sign up to speak beforehand, we'll get you in at the meeting, and then once you've all had an opportunity, we'll open it up for discussion. There aren't as many, there aren't too many people here tonight, so I don't think it'll be a problem to have just kind of an open discussion. But we'll just see how this goes. I know the technology is a little bit harder than being in the same room, but we'll see what we can make it do. So rules and etiquette for tonight. I know we've had a year to get used to virtual meetings, but they all run a little differently depending on how it's going. So for right now, if you're not muted, hit your mute button. And then when we open it up to discussion, we'll unmute people so that they can talk. If you have anything to say, you can use the raise your hand button. The chat should be active as well. So feel free to use that to ask questions. And if you guys don't mind putting, names and addresses in the chat, if you're comfortable with that, that'll kind of give me an idea of who we've got attending the meeting if you're not one of the people that already signed up or emailed me. And that's just to gauge whether we've got the interest spread out along the whole street, one concentrated area, kind of what level of who was able to attend the meeting. It is being recorded. It will be posted online. All the meeting materials are also posted. So we can go back and use those in the future if needed. Okay. So getting through the basic NSP stuff. The Neighborhood Streets program is for livability of the neighborhoods. So speeding, cut through traffic, parking from outside the neighborhood. I know you guys are all aware of this. The requirements. So it's a commitment from you guys, which I've definitely seen over the last year and before that. It's an investment of time and energy And then it's a respect for differing point of view. So, you know, I've heard from various people with different ideas of solutions out there. And so this is just figuring out what is best for the community and what everybody would like to do. So the goals of Neighborhood Streets program, we're preserving and improving neighborhood livability by discouraging speeding and unsafe driver behavior, encouraging walking, biking, and rolling, improving safety for all the road users. We're problem solving as a community. So this is not the county coming in. This is you guys really being involved, and I do appreciate that. And it's using tax dollars efficiently by prioritizing requests. So as we've seen the program kick off and more people get aware of their neighborhoods, we're trying to be very aware of the best way to use our funds as the county. So it's a two-phase process. Phase one, usually takes about a year, and it's changing driver behavior. And then the second year are those changes to the environment. So those are those physical changes, which you've already been through if you're here long enough to remember getting your speed bumps installed on your street. Okay, sorry. Chat in there. Phase one, so brush and vegetation trimming, yard signs, which we're more than happy to deliver, traffic signs and markings, neighborhood speed watch, the radar trailer, which has been out there a few times, and I have a request in to get it out there again. It does a couple things. It gathers data for us, so we can see what kind of speeds and volumes we're dealing with, but it also changes driver behavior while the trailer is out there. And we know this. So when we're gathering speed information, we know that the trailer affects that. But it does have an effect while it's out there. Excuse me, something in my throat. We can do community newsletters and targeted enforcement. So I know that you guys have done a number of these phase one things already. We've done yard signs. We did an evaluation of the no through truck signs and did some improvements on those. We've done targeted enforcement. So we've kind of been through the phase one options, and we're looking at phase two. So eligibility of the roads, posted speed 35 miles an hour or less, got that. 85th percentile speed. That is not, of all the data I've gathered, you don't have that, but you have speed bumps. So I wouldn't expect you to have the higher speeds out there. And that's not exactly what we're looking at. But you are a neighborhood route, and you do have volumes that are over 1,000 vehicles per day. So one of the changes to the program that came about in the last year is it's expanded to residential collectors. So we're going to see more streets become eligible for neighborhood streets programs, but these are roads that are 500 or more feet long. They've got residential property, and then 3 of the following. So more than 50, fronting properties per mile, on-street parking, no bike lane, no center two-way left turn lane. So if you live on a residential collector and are just attending this meeting, or you know somebody and they have a concern and they're part of Washington County, this has been expanded to them. So the next step, projects are ranked for funding according to their eligibility. So that's where we're getting into the best use of the funds that we have. And a petition is circulated in the community. So that is the involvement from you guys. I need 1 signature per property owner, and I need at least 51% of the property owners to sign it to move forward. So if this is something that we think we're interested in going forward, we can work on that petition process to see if the neighborhood supports that. And then we would develop a traffic calming plan based on feedback from you guys and what we're able to approve through the county. And then you get a vote on it. So I know we've been conducting a lot of this virtually, but just like we sent out the meeting notices in the mail, the ballots would, at this point, also go out in the mail. So each person would receive one, and then they, yes or no on it, send them back. And that's a 67% approval to move forward. So that's where it becomes very critical to have everybody aligned with the idea of what you want to do for traffic calming, because if you've got different ideas, you're not going to be able to hit that 67% approval if not everybody likes what's going on. So some of the things that we can look at doing is there's always the do nothing option. Continued education, mediate islands, speed cushions, curb extensions, pavement texturing. These are all generic things. I know not all of them apply to you guys. But we would make sure that this traffic plan, whatever's developed, is sent out to everybody so they have an idea, a chance to look at it, review it. And then if it were, if it passed the balloting and was approved, and we'd implement it, and then we'd review the results, making sure that we got, that we're getting the intended results and no negative ones that come from it. So that is the Neighborhood Streets program in a nutshell. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and see where we've landed.
Melissa, you have one question from Diane Heel. It's one signature per property owner. Does this apply to multi-unit properties as well?
So the way that we send out the ballots is for tax lot address. So if you had, say, a property with an ADU, but it's one address for everything, and that would be one ballot. If you've got separate addresses for them, because when we pull them off of our GIS information that would have it. So like apartment complexes, I think they ended up with one ballot for an apartment complex because it was one owner. So it depends on whether you've got two separate addresses under that or not, but most likely I'm thinking that it would be one ballot. Okay, going down here, radar trailer. Can you comment on the accuracy of the data it actually captures? So yes, it does slow traffic down. You're most likely seeing people slowing down when they see the radar trailer. We have done a comparison between radar trailer and non-radar trailer and the speeds of the traffic, and it usually drops them about 3 miles an hour. So we take the bulk speed of the traffic and we're looking for an 85th percentile. So 85% of the traffic is driving at or below. And it'll drop that number by about 3 miles an hour. So we account for that in all the, do you qualify stuff. Because one of the things that's been observed is that people that are driving really fast down a street, those ones that you're like, wow, that must have been doing 50 or more, they aren't going to necessarily slow down when they see the trailer. But yeah, it does have an effect. Okay, so there are several ditches that could be retrofitting into low impact development swales. These include bump outs to slow traffic. And neighborhoods could adopt and maintain these facilities. That is correct. That is one of the options that you could propose is one of the things is when you get into ditches and swales, that pulls in clean water services because they maintain all of the stormwater in the county. But, if we're doing anything that's going to add, side of the road improvements, we could be affecting stormwater and have to pull them in anyway. Bump outs are a great option to both slow traffic and make it annoying, so hopefully reduce the cut through traffic and address some of that stormwater. So that is something that you could propose, but I will say that just converting ditches adds a little bit of a trickier element. Oh, I see we have somebody who could ask CWS about the process. That would absolutely, if that's something that you guys want to propose, that gives us a little bit of a hand because I'm not as familiar with the stormwater concept. I just know that we do have to defer to that. So, yes. So at this point, I think we're going to get to the open speaking time for you guys. So I have a list here of people who had signed up, and first on the list was Bob Smith. So Bob, we can allow you to speak and have you unmuted, and the floor is yours.
Well, we've lived here for 36 years, and we've just watched the traffic get terrible. The speed bumps that we first put in, the neighborhood paid for, I guess weren't code. You'd go out in the morning and you'd find parts of cars laying in the street, but it did slow them down. Then you came out and you put some other speed bumps that everybody's learned with these new car suspension. They don't have to slow down. They can hit them just as fast as they're going, and their suspension smooths them out. That's one point. Another is you've got 4 no-through truck signs on Beaverton Hillsdale facing east and west, and you have 4 on Canyon facing east and west. I go out and stop the trucks all the time and tell them, this looks like a truck, it sounds like a truck, why are you on this street? They'll tell you, oh, I'm making a delivery in your neighborhood. I'll say, well, show me the invoice. We can't do that. I've gotten in the car and I followed them all the way from our street, down Canyon, up Walker, all the way, Walker, another street they're not supposed to be on, all the way to Cedar Hills Boulevard to make their delivery. I pulled in and said, I don't think this is my neighborhood. The whole thing, and like yesterday, there was a tanker truck that come through in the afternoon, a gas truck. And there's one that comes in early in the morning, a double tanker gas truck, not in a neighborhood. So my whole solution is just have the sheriff department come out and sit in our driveways. It's probably going to take 2 because they're going to be writing up tickets like it's going out of style. And once they learn they're getting a ticket, we don't have to do anything to the street. Just deter them from using it. Pardon? I guess that's going to be it.
Okay. For the speed bumps, I would agree that the newer ones are less effective. The reason they're designed the way they are is for fire trucks. And the sheriff's office was the one that told me that the new speed bumps, they've tested them out, and the new suspension on vehicles that has minimal effect. So you are right about that. The delivery trucks, I wish I knew a way to stop them. I need to follow up with the sheriff's office and get their wording exactly. They had an explanation about how they're able to stop the vehicles. And it has to do with having to follow them through and seeing that they don't make a delivery. So let me follow up with that with the sheriff's office. But I understand your frustration, and the truckers have learned that if they say they're making a delivery, then the no-through truck doesn't apply to them.
You would bring it to an end by just giving them tickets. You know, it's just, I sit and look out the window and just watch truck after truck after truck. It's like living on Cornelius Pass. That's how ridiculous it is. So
I will follow up and see if I can get some more answers from them.
it just needs to have the law enforced. That's all, simple.
So, and I know we've brought it up to them before, so let's see if we can get a little more traction with that one. So with that completed, next person would be Steve Holgate. Steve, it is, you're up.
Let's see, do you hear me now?
There you go.
Okay. I just want to second what Bob said. I have an office on the second floor of our home, and so I'm watching the traffic all morning long. And there are huge delivery trucks, freight trucks, tanker trucks. There are enormous dump trucks, often pulling excavators after them. If they pass each other, one going east, one going west, it's really scary to be out there on the street. Have cringed at times, wondering if the mirror from one of these trucks is going to hit me. Um, some increase is inevitable. You know, there's more traffic all the time. There have been a lot of new units put in on 96th, but some of the traffic here comes from unintended results, I believe. 91st, I think, and 107th are supposed to be kind of the feeders. And by the time you put all the traffic controls on 91st, I'm less familiar with 107th, suddenly 96 looks much more attractive. So the traffic controls have had the paradoxical result of actually getting the traffic off of those streets and onto ours. We've had deputy sheriffs tell us that we have considerably more traffic here on 96th than there is on 91st. Another major factor, I think, is that Google Maps, Waze, and other online mapping services tell people to take 96th. Like Bob, I've stopped trucks too. And I said, what in the world are you doing here? Oh, well, Google told me to come this way. And I see, did you see the sign saying no trucks? Well, Google told me to come this way. You know, we've all seen stories of people actually here in Oregon one time driving their car into the ocean because that's what Google told them to do. So they're not paying attention to much of anything else. So this is one of the problems we've got. As I say, it can be really scary to walk along 96. We've had one of our neighbors a few years ago hit by a truck that was hit and run. We wanted to get a little testimony from him, but he had to go into a nursing home and nobody's quite sure where he is. And so we can't bring him into it. I know others have ideas for traffic controls. I really would love to see, as Bob says, more enforcement here. But one thing that would be very low cost and might have a real effect is for the county council to write to Google, Waze, and these other online mapping services and tell them they are routing traffic onto streets not meant for it. Supposedly there are filters for trucks, but the trucks don't use them. The filters tell them, well, go this way except for trucks, but trucks don't use those. They don't pay any attention to them. So the trucks are coming along here because they believe Google's told them to do it. And they're creating a real safety problem. If the council were to tell them that if somebody is hurt or there's serious property damage, they would likely have to share in that liability because they're the ones putting trucks on and other cars onto streets where they're not supposed to be. And I think it might not work, but it might. And it certainly is very low cost to tell these various online mapping companies to tell their traffic to go on 91st or 107th and get off 96th. Yeah, we've often called companies up, just as Bob has. I've stopped trucks. Bob has stopped trucks. I know Ginny on the street has stopped trucks, which is kind of dangerous, but that shows the level of our frustration. But we've also then called up their companies and said, you know, your truck isn't supposed to go here. Sometimes they give us a runaround saying, well, gosh, we don't dispatch them. That's all done by some national headquarters. Or they say, yeah, we'll take care of that. And maybe for a week they don't come this way, but then very quickly they're back again. So that's what I've got to say. That was the end of my statement.
Sorry, I was trying to get myself unmuted there. Okay, so a couple things for you. I'm going to follow up on the 91st and 107 navigation app. That is a rabbit hole that I jumped down, and it has brought me no end of frustration. So I followed up on somebody's suggestion about California had found a way to make an agreement with them or something. that's not applicable to Oregon. We have no data sharing with navigation companies, and no way to restrict them. We've tried to change that unsuccessfully with a number of them. They're not interested in finding our route that we don't want them on. I just found another line of somebody who has a friend of a friend that might know a way to see if we can get maybe Google or one of those. So I'm still chasing that one down. We've actually engaged, not engaged. We're thinking of elevating this. If I could figure out how to see if we can take this, I'm going to say a step higher than county council, actually go to like the state legislature and see if they can put some pressure on some of these companies, because Washington County is not alone in the frustrations with some of these. There's a number of other cities, towns, counties that are having these issues. So we're thinking this is not a county issue. We should take it a bit higher and see if we can find some traction at the legislature to put some pressure on Google, Waze, and the other navigation apps. So I'm working on it. I don't expect that to be a quick process at all, which is why I'm hoping that we can do something with enforcement. I know you're as frustrated as I am, and if we could find a way, I'm sure all of you will be first in line to start sending emails or notifications to all of these places telling them that we don't want their traffic on our local streets. So we're working on it. I don't have an answer for that one yet, and I tried. I'm sure you guys have tried as well.
Am I still on? I was wondering though if a slightly different tack might make a difference, not simply requesting them to do this, but warning them that they could be liable. And so this makes it in their interest to route the traffic elsewhere.
The only problem I see with that is roads are public domain. So they're for public use. They could, that's that tricky situation with the sheriff's office doing the enforcement. So I'm hoping that we can get some legislative traction with that one. I don't know that me trying to call up Google and tell them that they can be liable is going to have any traction. If I could figure out any sort of online complaint form for any of these, I would be sending requests in for that. But because public roads are public roads and therefore able to be used for the public, I'm not sure that that one is going to help us out as much. But if you've got any new information on that, send me an email and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, it comes from them. I would think, again, the hook would be that they are urging trucks, in a sense, to break the law. So this starts making it their problem. Granted, it's a public road, but these trucks aren't supposed to be there, and they're the ones routing them onto it.
Just like the car that went into the ocean, though. They're not making you follow their directions. They're giving you a suggestion. It's your fault if you're not reading the no through trucks thing. Mm-hmm. I could see that argument being made. So.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you hearing me out.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on. Ramesh, are you on here? I saw you earlier. There you are. You are up next. So if we can get you unmuted, yes. There you go.
Can you hear me, Lisa? I'm here. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity, even though I sent my request at the very last minute, I think. So thank you very much. And also I had to thank Mr. Smith and Mr. Holgate. They've already talked about 2 points on my list. So you can, double the importance of the two things that they spoke about. The first one about the bumps and the second one about the truck traffic on 96th. So they've both spoken enough that I don't have anything much to add on those two things. But I want to talk about 2 other items that I have on my list, and I have a request at the end. So hopefully I won't test your patience and I'll be quick on that. The first one is recently there was an approval for that 12 apartment complex coming up on 96 closer to Beaverton Hillsdale Highway. And I want to make sure that you guys have considered the additional traffic or the additional, stress that's going to come on 96 because of that. Uh, I, I, I felt in the hearing on that, I went there and I did speak about, sent a note about this to say that if you don't consider the traffic that's going to be generated because of those things, we might be pushing the can down the road. So any discussion or any of the numbers that you show or use for the traffic pattern on that street needs to consider that new apartment complex. I'm sure you know which is the one that I'm talking about. I don't have the exact details with me right here.
So the one you're talking about is within the city of Beaverton. The very south end near Beaverton Hillsdale of 96 has annexed into the city. So they're the ones that would have done the land use decision.
Sure.
And had all of the traffic impacts. So the additional traffic on 96 and all that stuff, that all went through the city of Beaverton. We provided input because 96 is our street, but ultimately they set the conditions. So I anticipate when that goes in, we'll be seeing the effects of that on 96. I don't know that they were conditioned to do any additional traffic measures on 96 at this time.
Doesn't matter, as long as what you're saying is it's already been considered and it's in the pipeline, and those will also roll into your decision later on this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. The second one is 96th is a weird street. If you look at that, it's like a patchwork of about 4 sections. I know that street by the back of my hand because I walk that street almost every day, getting to Canyon Road and going for my long walks through Canyon Lane. The problem there is the sidewalks are almost non-existent, and even small sections of it where they're existent, they are probably some of the newer construction and so on. And there is one section of this street right after McKinnon that's really hazardous to even walk. So I want you to consider making sure that there is a proper sidewalk, either planned or assigned or planned into any road improvement that you're going to do. It can be either on one side of the street or on both sides of the streets. But right now, I literally do a zigzag. I take the sidewalk on one part of it, cross over, take the sidewalk, cross back, and so on. That's one thing that I want you to make sure is a part of this road improvement project, that when you do that. Am I making sense?
Yes. So I will tell you that sidewalks generally fall under ERMs. They have a sidewalk, used to be called minor betterment. It's now called bike and ped improvements. So they have, you can nominate a project for this, and then every year every 2 years, the ERM, so that's Urban Road Maintenance District Advisory Committee, reviews all of these and they select projects for construction. So the sidewalk one that you're talking about would fall under that portion. It's not really a neighborhood streets program. Like, we don't tackle missing sidewalk. That falls under the other program. So if 96 hasn't already been proposed as a project through that, I would recommend that you look into that and get it on the list for that type of improvement. I will get you the link to how to get your project on there.
Okay, thanks. Right, I will follow up on my part. I just wanted to make sure that we don't do something in neighborhood streets program that will either come in the way or run contrary to that program. That was my intent. And the other thing that I had on that was that of the road markings or even indications of whether it's parking or whether it is the center lane or anything. There isn't almost anything on that street. So you're still not sure where it's okay to park, where it's not okay to park. I know there is a ditch in one part of the road where people can't park, but is there any need or any plan to have some pavement markings that will make it easy to use, better to understand what's the usage model for that part of the street?
So we wouldn't typically put any sort of pavement markings like striping on a neighborhood route, which is what your street is. As far as parking goes, it's open parking. If the street is wide enough, you are free to park on either side of it. If we have determined that any part of it is not acceptable for parking and we restrict it, we would put signs up. So you'd see the signs that say no parking, but that would only be if we determined that there was a reason to restrict parking, like sight distance or safety. Otherwise, a neighborhood route is you can park on both sides of the road. It's determined by the road width. If your road doesn't have curb, so if it has a ditch, we use that driver interpretation of whether you think it's safe to park there, unless it's signed. If it has a curb, that's where you're most likely going to see those no parking signs or an absence of signs, and you're welcome to park there. If you have a specific area of concern that you think needs to be no park, that would be something you could submit and I can look into.
Sure.
But it would be signs. We wouldn't do any sort of pavement markings, and we definitely wouldn't put in any of the hash marks for on-street parking spaces.
So probably you preempted an answer to the next thing that I was going to ask you, which was what Mr. Holgate also referred to. This is trucks on 96th. There are some areas on 96th where even though you can park cars and cars can be easily accommodated, there are times when there are trucks parked there. Is there a way to say that trucks can be parked here instead of no parking of any kind of vehicles?
So are you asking about whether we can restrict trucks only, or are you wanting to restrict all vehicles?
No, trucks particularly, because sometimes they take up more space than a car or another passenger vehicle would, and it does become a little bit of a maneuvering to get around, especially where the road curves. There's a slight bend where it almost halfway between Canyon and this thing. That's probably this part where it's so easy to see them either part even when it is turning from that road. That is what I know you guys will have a more scientific and a more data-driven approach to find out what's the best way to do it. I just want to bring it to your notice. Okay. And maybe the last one is a little request for you, after which I'll let others speak. You said that the ballots are going to be mailed out soon for 67% or more of the votes to come in. Would you be able to send us who all those ballots went out, so that if we want to do like a mail-in campaign or something, we'll be able to contact them and persuade them to send in their ballots? Because if a ballot didn't show up and if you consider it as a no vote, we would like to see if we can cover that area.
Okay, so truck parking, we cannot restrict only trucks. There is an Oregon statute that defines what trucks can park on residential streets. It's essentially trying to say that, like, you can't park your semi truck on or construction equipment. I'm terrible at quoting ORSs. Sorry. There is one that talks about it. So that one is a way, but if it's a truck that's allowed to park on the street, we wouldn't be able to restrict just trucks, especially because 96 being a neighborhood route is considered a queuing street. So it's perfectly acceptable to have parking on both sides and vehicles only allowed to drive one at a time through an area, kind of having to take turns and alternate. That's the point of a queuing street. It slows traffic down and makes you more aware of your surroundings. So, like I said, if there's an area where you think that it needs to be evaluated because there's a safety concern for on-street parking, we could go look at that. But what we would do is then restrict all parking, not just trucks.
Okay.
So,
I understand. Hopefully we may not have that problem much more, or if any of these improvements come up, it might reduce. I'm always hopeful. I'm always an optimist. So we'll hope for the better. Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah. So for the ballots, I will tell you that we'll send out some information that will tell you what's being proposed, the area that's affected, and then, like, if there's something that we're going to install, it'll show you where it's going to be installed and stuff like that. I can absolutely send out the area that ballots are sent to, and then when you get to that point, if it comes down, because there's usually like a 1 month period where I have, this is when you have to have your ballots in by. As it gets closer to the end of that, if you've got somebody who wants to, who's really the one spearheading this campaign and wants to know who, if they have enough ballots or if they have missing ones and they want to chase down the end of them, that is, I can provide you with, I can't tell you how the voting's turned out, but if you want to know where to go look for missing ballots,
Sure.
I can provide that information.
Okay, we'll work on that when it comes to balloting. Thank you, Melissa. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
I yield the floor. I yield the floor to the rest of the members in the meeting today.
That is everything I had as far as speakers that had signed up. So I see we have quite a few hands going here.
I'm going to unmute Kristen first. She's had her hand up for a while.
Okay, thank you.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is Greg, Kristen's husband. Yeah, I just want to echo everything that everybody's already stated. This street is obviously a challenge. We moved in. We've now got 2 kids. I cannot walk down our street. And so I want to tell you this just so you can illustrate the gravity of the issue that we've got in front of us. We've got a 1-year-old, we've got a 3.5-year-old. I live right up the street from Bob. And just as Ramesh was just saying, we literally have to tic-tac-toe across the street as we navigate down the street to get down it safely. So while I understand that sidewalks are another challenge, because it's a different agency that's responsible for it, I hope you can understand our frustration, and it's not your fault by any means, but frustration in local government where we present a neighborhood streets program, and then there's particulars that are not appropriate to be addressed by this council because it has to be addressed by another council. Totally understand that's not your problem to solve for, but I want you to understand the frustration on this street, because it is, you almost can't raise a family to the point that, we would consider moving if this gets considerably worse. So that's where we kind of stand on that. One other piece, you mentioned that it's a neighborhood route, and I understand that's the classification of this street, but that classification no longer exists. So whether it's the width of the street, whether it's the traffic of the street, that classification does not matter anymore, because when we get thousands of cars going up and down the street on a daily basis, really what we need to start looking at is truly what is the systemic cause of what's going on. And it's many things, right? It's, we can tie this back to, the construction that will probably be going on 217 in the coming years to widen that highway. Because I firmly do believe that the cause of the challenges that we see here today are because Google and Waze and everybody else. But even if we could go to Google, which I firmly believe there's nothing that you can do. I've researched it myself. They basically just say too bad, too sad. We're doing what's best for people to find the most economical way to go about their route. And there's no legal liability for them anyways. But I don't think we're going to get there. Should someone chase it down? Sure. But in reality, people understand that this is a cut through. It's what it's become because of what's going on 107th, Chick-fil-A and everything else down there. No one goes down that street anymore, right? No one goes down 91st because you've got all, the traffic features that are over there. And I raise this because I think the only way that we get traffic to reduce is by drastic measures. And I'm eager to see what options, you have in front of us and that will be presented to us, but signs aren't going to do it. People that are driving through this neighborhood are from states all across the Western United States. People don't care about this neighborhood that are driving through it. We are simply a mechanism to get to their next place because they want to bypass 26 and 217. That's the reality of it. So how do we stop traffic from going down here? It's not with a sign. It's not with the speed bumps that I see sheriffs hit at our, in front of my house at 60 miles per hour at 11 o'clock at night. The speed bumps don't do anything. So these are all things that you already know. I just want to make sure that it's another person that's voicing, a perspective that I think is important. So, that's kind of where I see things, and, whatever we can do to help evangelize this through the neighborhood, hopefully we can come together and do that. So I also want to just thank you, Melissa, and whoever, the team is behind you that's helping to support you. So I appreciate it.
I have a question. Do you have an example or, an idea of something you would like to see implemented?
Well, I mean, I hate to say it because because we have a difficult street, depending on the traffic calming measures that you can put in that are, I was on the Federal Highway Safety website last night. What calming measures are appropriate, in the United States of America? And unfortunately, the layout of our street lends itself to something that, we would have to close off traffic in certain directions, or, that would be the most extreme, right? You can only turn right going southbound on Beaverton Hillsdale. You can only turn right rather than turning left. I mean, you can count the cars. I mean, when it's a normal day, non-pandemic, we have cars stretching from Beaverton Hillsdale halfway down the street. Not halfway down the street, but going probably almost all the way to your house, Bob. I've seen that. Yes. So if you're thinking you've got 30 cars deep trying to turn left on Beaverton Hillsdale coming from Canyon, what the hell are they doing going on that traffic pattern? So the only way to do it is either drastic measures by stopping certain turns in certain directions, or we have to pinch our street down to the point that people cannot go 25, 30, 40. I see people regularly go down my street at 40 miles an hour. I'm sitting in my basement working and I can hear their mufflers hit our speed bumps. So I hate to say it, but it's something drastic. And the reason I hate to say it is because now as someone that lives here, I won't be able to go in an ease of access way to get to where I need to go because of all the 2,000 other folks that are cutting through to go to Jesuit, cutting through to go to Western, cutting through to go wherever the heck they're going because they don't want to go on the highway.
And that's one of the things that I want you guys to say. I mean, you brought up what is ultimately my point is if I suggest that we restrict movements at Beaverton, Hillsdale, Canyon, or both, it does me no good to say these things and then you guys not to be accepting of them. But if you're willing to say that we have now created, if we restrict movements, it is going to be an impact for your neighborhood. But is it worth it to reduce that cut through traffic because they can no longer do the movements that they want to do, like left turns out of there? So that is where this discussion becomes you guys giving me your input. You say drastic measures, and I say if you guys are willing to accept those and we can get that 67% on the ballot, that's my ultimate goal is to get something that you guys are accepting of. So if drastic measures, as you're calling it, is what it is, that's what I'm looking for. Is I honestly believe that that's one of your better methods at this point. I mean, we can try more enforcement, but is that gonna help? And is that gonna help in a timeline that's acceptable to you guys? So this is the conversation tonight is how far are you willing to go? What are you willing to accept to have your neighborhood back?
Yeah. Are there, so I would imagine that there are multiple options that your team can put together. Can that be just one of the worst case scenarios as someone to actually truly analyze what's the traffic pattern going southbound, what's the traffic pattern going northbound, and maybe it's only southbound that truly needs, some type of mitigation strategy. Then you kind of get into secondary measures that are less drastic where you start pinching down the street like they've done on 91st, and elsewhere where it forces cars to truly slow down. You're not going to stop necessarily the traffic right off the bat, but at least you slow them down. And then inherently, I would imagine over time, people get sick of dealing with the slow traffic pattern. And so then they divert and start going down a different street.
So I will look into what additional data I can collect to find some more solutions. But if any of you have suggestions for things that you would find acceptable or you would like to, please raise your hand and speak up. I know we have at least 3 more of you that either have ideas or comments. So let's go ahead and move on to the next.
Teresa was next, but Burr says in the Q&A that they don't have the ability to speak, but they'd like to say that 25 miles equals at least 30 miles for most. Most folks think 5 miles per hour over is cool. It is not cool. 30 miles an hour is too much for a street with limited sidewalks. Can we go down to 20 miles an hour? So if you could answer that real quick, and then I'll unmute Teresa.
So I do not have the ability to drop the speed limit down to 20. That is only able, it's only cities are able to change the speed limit down to 20 when that became an option for jurisdictions to use. They said that cities could use it, but counties cannot. So unfortunately, we are unable to post it at 20. So that's where we're left using other measures to try to get traffic to slow down without posting it, because from a legislative standpoint, I'm not allowed to post it at 20. I hope that answers your question, but feel free to pop in the chat if that doesn't do it.
There, okay.
Hello?
Yeah.
It says Teresa, but it's Dennis.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to apologize for not being early in this meeting. I came home in the middle of it. Back in the 90s, I authored the Neighborhood Streets program and traffic calming, along with Elaine O'Keefe from the county. And I was also on the North-South Committee, which was trying to get the county to put another alternative route through from Beaverton Hillsdale to Canyon. And they had actually thought about it down by the Lutheran Church. And anyway, we've had a lot of these programs before, and the county has not been willing to invest in our area. Case in point, the bad intersection at Olison, Shoals Ferry, and Beaverton Hillsdale Highway. That's been promised to, fix that for 30 years at least. And what Greg was saying about drastic measures absolutely applies. The county has not stepped up, and you're probably too young to remember this. That's a compliment. That we reduced this speed on the street. Our neighbors did. In the early 90s, we had to go to the state because you were accurate in saying that you don't have jurisdiction, but it's doable. And with the county's help and maybe authoring a paper, we could get it done again. So it's all doable. It just is a matter of will. And in 94, when I went door to door to collect money for these bumps, they told us before that happened, the engineers in Washington County said, you'll never see a speed bump in Washington County. And that filled my gas tank full. I was ready to go. And so I went to City of Portland, spent a lot of time in their traffic division, and brought documents and engineering to the county, and they still resisted. So Mike Maloney at that time was head of operations and maintenance. And so in a very public meeting, I asked him what the problem was. And he said, money. I said, well, I can solve that. What if we pay for it? Whoops. And we did. So it's all doable. That's all I have to say. And the 20-mile-an-hour thing should be done. And the north-south, creating a new avenue through this area is definitely needed and has been promised for over 30 years. So as residents, we have our hands tied if the county isn't willing to really step up. That's all I have to say, unless you have questions for me, because I have a lot of history.
I was going to say, I think you have more history than I do, so that puts me at a slight disadvantage.
I like that.
I'm all for it. So I don't know anything about an alternate north-south route.
Look back at the north-south project.
So I do know that Beaverton, Hillsdale, Canyon, Shoals, Wilson, whatever, I call it an octopus. I know that's not correct, but that's what it seems like to me. I've been advocating for that one for a while from a safety standpoint, but if you'll notice, the major road that runs right through there is ODOT. So that is a hands-tied situation because it crosses jurisdictions to the state. I would love for somebody to figure out a way to get that one fixed. but I don't expect to find a pot of gold with a leprechaun here in the next few weeks.
Oh, one other historical fact is Mike Maloney offered 91st an MSTIP. Am I saying that right? Yeah, MSTIP project that would have made that 3 lanes, full sidewalks, and the neighborhood turned it down. So instead, they got rid of the vertical curves, and that's all they did. And if that would have been done, that would have alleviated our street, because at the time it was a major collector. We were a local street. Then we bumped up to a minor collector.
I totally agree with you right there.
So time after time, the county has not followed through. And so we're left, with our neighborhood in ruins from the street.
So I can't do anything about the major project. If you can bend a commissioner's ear to get something reclassified in the TSP, but I'm looking at it now, and both 96th and 91st are neighborhood routes.
Have they changed the classification to neighborhood routes? Used to be.
Yeah, they don't have minor collectors anymore. So local, neighborhood route, collector, arterial.
That's interesting. I wonder why they did that.
I have no idea. That was before my time. So, but I do see your point of not having a good north-south connector. So people are going to use whichever street is most convenient to cut through. My suggestion is to make your street very inconvenient by whatever means you can.
And
so
one thing that you said that resonated, that I really appreciate you said, it's better to have extra parking on our street because it's a pinch point like Portland uses. And so to make areas that are, no parking area is just going to speed the traffic up.
Yeah, so I really advocate if you put sidewalks in to find ways to put in pinch points, whether it's, I don't know if you were here for there was a conversation at the very beginning about swales.
Yes.
So if you could turn bulb outs into swales, that would create the pinch point. I hate to eliminate on-street parking, and I hate to do improvements on the side of the road because all of that stuff makes the road seem like you can drive faster. And no matter what it's posted, people drive the speed that they're comfortable with. So if you give them a very uncomfortable road, they're likely to drive slower. I don't know if that's going to help you with your truck traffic. That's the one that I cannot figure out how to get trucks off of your road without restricting movements at the end.
Well, the only way that I think would work, see, we went through all of these steps back in the 90s, like the police would come out and set up radar for a half hour, just to appease us. That doesn't work. You have a common carrier division, don't you?
Motor carriers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they actually dedicated sitting on our street for 2 or 3 days straight, and I'm talking about 8 hours a day, it's probably not possible, but that would do it because these trucks that are coming through here, it's a routine for them. They do them every day and ticket every single one of them. And that, like I think Greg was saying or Steve was saying, that would work. But these spot enforcements don't work. They never have.
If I may, Denny, also, not to diminish anybody's concerns around trucks, but honestly, like I saw that tanker truck go through yesterday, and I know most aren't him. He went through at 10, 15 miles an hour, is extremely courteous. It almost looked like he was lost and he didn't realize he jumped on our street. The trucks are really not my concern. Do I want a big semi truck driving through our street, and do they knock the power lines off? And, do they knock, the phone lines off the towers sometimes? Yeah, absolutely. But I'm not concerned about a truck being the one that's going to hit my kid. I'm worried about the 2,500 assholes that are driving over to Jesuit High School. I'm talking about the people that are driving down Western, bypassing 26, 217, I mean, what was the latest traffic numbers that go one way on our street? I mean, the last quote I heard pre-pandemic was what, 2,500 cars going southbound on a neighborhood street? This is insanity that we're actually even discussing this as a neighborhood route. Like, the county needs to take accountability for this, the cars that are going down our street, because there aren't other streets to go down. I hate to sound so angry about it, but that's just the fact. I mean, it's absurd. So I would love to see drastic measures. I would love to see a middle measure, and I'd love to see, you know, kind of what the standard measures are. But I'd also be curious to see what type of studies there are to actually show that signs will actually do anything. You know, because the signs aren't being adhered to as it is. You put out a radar van that displays someone's speed and they slow down when they're coming around the bend before they even hit the radar to actually even capture it. It's just all of these measures, just, they don't do anything. They fall flat. And the trucks really aren't the issue. It's the 2,500 cars that are going in one direction to bypass traffic because they live in Vancouver and they need to get to their job wherever the hell it is in our neck of the woods. And we just seem to be the lowest common denominator as a street.
Greg, can you hear me?
Yep.
I totally agree with you. Trucks are not the major problem. And anyway, that's all I have to say. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I only say that, and Denny's my neighbor. We are good friends. So I only say it because the trucks are going, yes, but it's the guy that's going 35 miles an hour in a hoopty going down the street that couldn't care less about anybody in this neighborhood and anything else. And that's going to be the person that, yeah, I truly believe is going to kill someone. Because people fly up this street. I wish I could just stand out there for 8 hours and send you guys a video, because no traffic study that you do can truly illustrate what happens on this street until someone physically stands out here and watches.
And Greg, if you ever want comparisons, I have a big box in my basement of all the traffic studies and the 85th percentile speed studies that were done in the 90s, if you want a comparison.
I love you, Denny.
All right. So I'm going to cut you two off.
Did you say that on TV?
Can I jump in here for just a second? This is Bob again.
Bob, you've got about 10 seconds, but we do need to get to the rest of the people.
Okay, first of all, on the trucks, they don't mind. You got to remember our neighbor, Richard, who got hit by the truck mirrors. He was in his 80s going out to get his mail, and the truck didn't stop. He wound up having to have total reconstruction surgery on his shoulder. Medicare didn't pay for all of it. He had to go through and refinance his house. He still had to go into assisted living, and he lost the house to the people that he refinanced it with. Now, if any of you can tell me what's fair about that, please tell me now. I hate the trucks coming through here. And it's when you get two of them and there's a lady walking her dog, is she jumping in that gutter? And one more thing, when this street used to be a higher speed, me and the lady next door, Tress, we took videos of us driving in her car at 25 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour, and 45, like most of the people do through here. And any of you listening, it seems like we all went to court over that, some of you old timers, and I don't remember where we went, but we presented our case and we won and got it dropped down to 25. And I would like to also see it drop down to 20. And I think we could do it again if we all got together. And on trash day, put your trash cans in the street, narrow it down. That's it.
Okay, so I'm going to move us along to the next person. We're running not too bad, but I want to make sure we have everybody gets a chance to speak before the end. So
we're going to go Shauna McGuire.
Okay.
Unmuted now.
Hi, Melissa. This is Shauna McGuire.
Hi, Shauna. Go ahead.
I live in Commons Court. It's a small cul-de-sac off of 96th, one of the little private drives that's near the south end of 96th. I've been working from home for the last year, and I'm not sure if I've ever seen a semi go down our street, but I do know there's a lot of cars and a lot of trucks. I am concerned about the the apartment building that goes in there, the developer has had a couple meetings in front of, he's got 2 properties here on 96th, one on either side of me. And he's had a couple meetings and talked about it. And I agree that the more apartments and houses and stuff that he puts in these back deep lots, that's more traffic on 96th. I would be curious to see how many accidents have happened at the ends of our streets, because like I said, I've been here almost 6 years and I have seen a lot of accidents at the ends of the streets. I'm all for on Beaverton Hillsdale putting a no left turn up there. I've almost been hit a few times trying to get onto my street with people sitting there waiting, and there's a line of cars. I think somebody mentioned sometimes I can't even get into my cul-de-sac if I come from Canyon, because there's so many cars, I have to drive on the wrong side of the street just to get into our little area here. But the traffic is terrible. There's no doubt about that. I would love to see a light at Beaverton Hillsdale. We're the only street, I'm pretty sure, that goes through between Canyon and Beaverton Hillsdale that doesn't have lights on it at the ends of the streets, which I think is ridiculous. I mean, if there's also quite a few accidents down at the Beaverton Hill or the Canyon Road entrance to 96th. I've seen cars pushed all the way up into the car dealership over there. So I'm all for no left turn on Beaverton Hillsdale and a light at Canyon. If anyone wants to fight for that, I'm right there. Excuse me. The only other thing I had, you had mentioned the streets, unless they're considered dangerous to walk on. If there's cars parked on the sides of our streets, people have mentioned that then you're in a gully or a ditch or on the side of the road. So people have to walk into the street to get around the cars that are parked on either side of the street. So that makes it very dangerous, if you ask me, especially if you have a little dog that's going to stray into the street a little on a leash. So those are just a few of the thoughts I had. Also, streetlights would be really nice on 96. Really nice.
Okay, so I made a note that you favor the no left turn from 96 on the Beaverton Hillsdale, and you said a signal at Canyon. So signals are done based on signal warrants, but what I can do is run a signal warrant analysis for that and see if it is warranted. I have no idea how I would get it in there, but at least then we would have some information. I will again follow up on the sidewalks because that has me curious, and the streetlights. I don't know the process for those. I know that there is one, so I'm gonna have to go find out what that is, and if we have a process for getting street. The problem is a lot of these, I just don't know if we have pots of money for them, and it seems ridiculous. So I will follow up on some of the stuff and get back to you.
I have one other question for you. You had mentioned that the corner up there they incorporated into Beaverton?
On the south end.
The wheelworks up there at 96th, yeah.
Yeah, so the new apartment complex going in at Beaverton Hillsdale is in the city.
So has that apartment building been approved? I remember there was a meeting, but it all went to heck too when the whole...
I believe so, but you need to contact the city of Beaverton.
Okay.
So I never know about the...
Where does that line stop then? Because there's, between us and Beaverton Hillsdale, there's an apartment building, a small condo, and then a little blue building that I think is supposed to be taken out for that.
So my computer's really slow. I just had it pulled up, but I don't have it going.
That's okay. I was just curious where the line stops for the portion that got incorporated and where the unincorporated part is left.
So from what I can tell, the incorporated part is just south of, is it Carmina Lane? Carmina Lane.
Is that on the west side?
Both sides. So east and west of 96. There might be one house or building on the south side of Carmina, and then it goes to city of Beaverton.
I don't know where that road is.
If I can get it to load, I might do a screen share, but otherwise, Google Maps is your friend.
Okay, yeah, I'll figure it out. I just was curious. Thank you.
Southwest Carmina Lane is the development that Mickey created with, the housing development.
Yeah, he's the developer that's putting in the apartments and putting in the houses behind the one he bought 2 houses down.
Right, but that's Carmina Lane that she's referring to.
So that goes back to the Wheelworks there. So it's right behind this little strip mall on Beaverton Hillsdale.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's right across from us. I'm on Commons Court, so we are directly across from each other. So the apartments and the condos and stuff to the south of us are all in Beaverton then now.
The apartments, is that what's on the south side of Commons Court?
Yes.
So it looks like right behind, so 4450, is that 4450 Southwest 96 is in Washington County. South of that, so 4480 is all in the city of Beaverton.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's where the line is.
That's weird. That's just a little corner. Okay. Thank you. That was all I had. I was just curious about it.
Okay.
Next up will be Jules.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm gonna skip. I'm balancing 2 children at this time.
Okay, I'll leave your hand up. We'll come back to you, okay?
Question on the question and answer. Thank you for answering.
So next will be Cassie.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So I've lived on 96th for about almost coming up closer to 7 years now. And even in that shorter amount of time compared to so many of my longer living on the street neighbors, we've seen a significant uptick in the traffic. So I just wanted to back everyone's story. And it is something we've talked about as a community multiple times just in passing. And our experiences are very similar. For my home and specifically, it may be the closest house actually to the street. And what my family finds is that the commercial trucks create a tremendous amount of noise and vibration. So it's very common if a commercial truck goes by, even if it's just a small, maybe like furniture moving truck, they go by a lot doing deliveries, who knows where, but not in our neighborhood. Even those smaller trucks, they vibrate a whole house, the dishes, shake in the kitchen. And it's 24/7. So I don't know how familiar other neighbors on the street are with this, but because we're so close and our bedrooms are so close to the street, like I know the schedule of these trucks, like because I wake up at the exact same time every night to a specific truck going by for a specific company. So I definitely second the concern about trucks, but I wanted to add the specifics about the noise and vibration being a real growing concern for my property. And then additionally, I wanted to add that I love the idea of street narrowing with the caveat, because my partner and I are major walkers in the street. So we take big long walks throughout the neighborhood very regularly, and we use the street. We don't walk on the side. We hold our space on the street. We carry safety gear to increase our visibility. And it's definitely very stressful. So, but we need to exercise, so we do it anyway. And we have close calls with cars pretty regularly, even with all of those, attempts at being visible, walking against traffic, all those kinds of things. And so I very much support the street narrowing approach. I see it work time and time again in other places, but I really want to emphasize the caveat of still allowing pedestrians a way to get through safely. I think that would be a tremendous help. Also, median planters I see that a lot in Portland. I'm sure those things aren't cheap, but I see cars almost grow to a stop, slow to a stop because of the obstruction that they're coming across in the street. So I think that could potentially help. And then finally, I just wanted to add kind of a comment back to the streetlight suggestion. I love hearing all the neighbors' suggestions on this. I just wanted to add personally that I would be concerned if it was throughout the whole street, what wildlife impact that would have, as well as impacting things like stargazing and the like. So just wanted to put that out there for quality of life and the wildlife things. And then finally, so at the southern end, this is a question for you. At the southern end of 96th, the intersection onto TV Highway, who manages that intersection? Is that the city of Beaverton?
So Beaverton Hillsdale, the south end. Beaverton Hillsdale is, okay, let me turn on all my layers so I can get everything, is an ODOT facility. 96 is a county facility. That intersection is within the city of Beaverton, but depending on what your question has to do with,
Yeah, so specifically, it actually just has to do with the hedge that's to the left when you're facing south. It's right along the sidewalk, and in recent years, it's more carefully manicured. However, it's still significantly too tall for sedans to see left safely. I've submitted recommendations to the county previously, trying to see if that hedge could be removed. But I personally believe that it is probably a major cause of a lot of the accidents that happen there that take out the stoplight and the stop sign and the fence to the right. It's a major visibility concern. So just for safety of our neighborhood, if we're still turning left there for now, then I would hope I could get in contact with somebody who could help address that safety concern.
so the ground cover on the northeast corner of the intersection. So
Right in front of the
Yeah.
pawn shop.
Yeah, and the pawn shop, the little strip mall there.
Yeah,
okay,
it's the northeast corner, and I completely agree, because sometimes it gets too tall and you don't know who to ask to cut it. And all
let
of a
me
sudden
check
it's-
on that, because I hate to send you to like ODOT if
Yeah.
they're not going to be able to do anything.
Yeah.
I have a sneaking suspicion it's not us that you would complain to, but let me figure out whether
Okay.
it's city or state or who exactly. But yeah, that's a huge thing.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
let me find out.
So just, I'm
Okay, thank you so
It
much.
actually sits on the property of the property owner. So whoever owns that little strip mall where the pawn shop and the gun shop is, I would venture to guess it's them. Now, who can force them to actually lower the height? Yeah, maybe that's ODOT, I'm not sure, but I just want to echo what Cassie said, and I'm glad she brought that up because it's horrendous, and it's gotten taller over the years, and you can actually see someone went over there and actually cut the hedge, last year
Mhm.
at the point, and I've considered doing the same because it is really dangerous.
So, and that's where if
Yeah,
it falls
and
within the
I
right of
agree.
way and they don't trim it and it's creating a hazard, if it's within the right of way and it's a county facility, we might send a letter and say, hey, trim your hedge or we're going to come out and do it. And then when we do it, it's not pretty. So,
Yeah.
but it's effective. So that's where I want to figure out who controls it and see if they can send either a please maintain your hedge letter, or if it's in the right of way, go out and do it themselves. But there are rules, regulations, laws that control maintaining clear sight lines. So let me figure
Okay.
out who has that corner.
Okay, yeah, and the hedge right now is fairly maintained. It's still too tall though, like for sedans. I think a lot of people are in SUVs and trucks, so they might not realize it, but for lower cars, it fully obstructs right now. But thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Melissa,
Yes.
can I just add one short thing? Earlier, when we were talking about speed bumps and the severity of, and you mentioned TBF and R needing a certain speed bump, the ones that are especially in the Beaverton zones, have openings for the exact size or space that the wheels on the fire vehicles go through. So the height of the speed bump does not affect them.
You are correct. So if you're referring to like that's why our new standard has openings. As far as the height and width and all that stuff, there are national guidelines for those. So that's what we follow. I don't know what the cities do.
The city of Portland uses a lot that are called the Watt design, W-A-T-T. They're 14 feet through and 3 inches high, and with a the rate of ascent from the edge of the speed bump is very important. You can have it only 3 inches high, but if you make that increase quickly, they're rather severe, and that's called a Watts speed bump.
I'll look into that. I do know that if you put speed bumps, you're going to end up with the problem of people slamming on their brakes and then accelerating after they go over them. So it may deter cut through traffic, but it may not.
No, I know, but it would slow them down.
So real quick before we run out of time.
Gardner is the last one to speak. He's already unmuted.
Hey folks, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, hey everyone, Eric Gardner. I'm up near Southwest McMillan and 96th, right near Mr. Stephen Holgate. You probably know him. Just want to echo, I think, what a lot of folks here said. I grew up in a big major city, and jaywalking was the norm. So I'm no stranger to weaving and dodging through cars. But honestly, I don't feel comfortable without always looking over my shoulder walking on the street, let alone with my 2 young kids. As somebody said, right, it's a zigzag. You got to go back and forth, and you feel like you're sort of under attack. You're trying to protect them from the cars that are whipping by or the trucks that are really wide. So it's a big problem. I'd echo, I think, someone else who said, like, I'm actually surprised that no one has been killed yet with some of the pinch points, some of the areas that are really unsafe. Not to mention, I think someone mentioned the hedge at the south side. Especially some of the pinch points. It's surprising to me that no one has really been seriously injured. I think everything ought to be on the table. I think a lot of great suggestions here. I know these are not all part of this division, but things like lights at the ends. I think sidewalks. I think narrowing. I think speed limit. I think all ought to be on the table. As far as I think near term, one thing I'd like to ask is, in the decade that I've lived here, I've seen a lot of accidents, especially at both ends of the street. What I've never seen, though, on the street is actually any enforcement from the sheriff or from the police or anyone. I see them, regularly other places at the top of Canyon, at the bottom of Canyon, down on Southwest Island. They have their usual spots, but I have not ever once in all my trips back and forth on this street, coming home and leaving home, ever seen enforcement. So has that ever been attempted, or who do we contact to get that to happen? And then my last point is, I'd love to know what the next steps are. I know we're wrapping up here, but where do we go from here?
Okay, so for enforcement, if you go to the NSP website, we have a link to the sheriff's office. You can go online and request enforcement. I know they've been out there. I hear a lot that they never see, that you guys never see them. So feel free to send more requests in. If you have specific times, that's even better. If you can say that there is a truck that goes through every day and never stops at this time, if you can say that you have a certain issue and it's at this time, or every day at this time, or days of the week. So the more specific you are, the more likely you are to get an officer out there. I will also send a request to get them out there and to get some of the history of what they've seen when they go out there. I know we've talked to them before, but I don't have anything written down that I can remember and share. So you can do that online to get enforcement out there. Yeah, okay, so that answers that one. Sorry, did I miss something else you said?
And by the way, I did submit a request about the hedge, and they said, yeah, it was the property owner's responsibility. And I think they trimmed it shortly after. I don't know if there's a coincidence or not, but it's even trimmed, it's a hazard. And I'm in an SUV, and it's still challenging to see over. But I'm happy to work with folks on the street to help get some of these other, I think, initiatives going. The speed limit with the city, the sidewalks. I mean, I think we need to throw multiple rocks at the problem. So thanks.
Okay, so next step would be a petition from you guys, 51% of the property owners. And at this point, I'm going to consider the property owners anybody who is directly on 96 or on a street that 96 is their main route. Like if they're on a side street that's a dead end, or they live on one of the streets that goes to someplace else, but 96 is their main route of getting off. So those of you that are on McMillan that are really close to 96. So 51% of the people in that area, I need a petition signed and sent to me that says, we want to do something, and then we'll start pushing forward. If you have a main contact for your neighborhood, so one of you or a couple of you would like to volunteer to be the primary contact, the person who really pushes this forward and stays in touch with me, that would be even better. It'll make it a little lot smoother. So if you have, one or two or however many of you that want to send the NSP email, your contact information, and let me know, I will coordinate directly with you and let you be the voice of the neighborhood. But once we have that petition, we can start moving forward with proposals. So it would be great if you guys have some ideas. I tried to jot down some of the things that you were saying because I want to do what you as a neighborhood would accept and be able, what you think would make improvements out there. So if I say that I think the best course of action is to reduce, to restrict both ends to right in, right out, and absolutely nobody on your street is going to agree to that, it doesn't do me any good. I will try to initiate a number of studies to kind of figure out what's going on at both those intersections and look at, signals and stuff like that. I do need to check and see what we're seeing for volumes, because somebody mentioned, pandemic volumes. I agree. We have seen them come up. So we might be able to get some decent volumes now. Otherwise, if the volumes are so much different than they were pre-pandemic or post-pandemic, gathering all that information now may not give us the triggers that it would in 6 months. So some of that is a wait and see. Some of that is look at it now. But this is really the time. If you guys have any suggestions for things that you would specifically like me to research that I didn't capture already in one of your comments, please let me know. Send me an email, pipe up right now in the next 2 minutes. Check in the chat to see if I missed anything.
Would it be possible, Melissa, just to get is there like a simple list of options that the county could deploy? Because what I'm concerned about is that we don't present an option to you that might be available to us and we just aren't aware that it exists.
I do not have a list of options.
Okay, no worries. I mean, I'll look up traffic calming measures, and I've seen the pinch points and all the different options that are available. I just don't want to present to you an option that you then come back and say, oh, we can't do that because of X.
So if you're presenting something that neon green paint on the pavement or something obnoxious like that, if it doesn't meet accepted national, state, federal, local standards, then that would be something that, if you want to put a toll or a gate on there, can't do something like that. But if you're picking something that you find that has been done somewhere that is from a national standard, consider that on the table.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Melissa, is there something we should reference if we email you so that you know what we're talking? Is it just 96?
Yes, if you put 96th Avenue as a subject and you send me an email to LUTNSP, then I'll know exactly what you guys are referring to.
Okay, thank you.
So everything from tonight's meeting, recording of the meeting, I think a record of the chat as well, All of that's going to be posted online. So if you have friends or neighbors that weren't able to attend that wanted to see what we talked about, they can go there and reference all this stuff. If you think, you know, in the middle of the night tonight, oh, I wish I would have asked that, send me an email. If you're interested in starting the petition, then my recommendation would be to, if you're not comfortable going door to door because you're not that close to your neighbors, find an online platform. I did a little bit of research into them to try to find one that would work. But if you're more connected into online petitions, feel free to look them up yourself. What I need on the petition is the name and the address of the person. So our normal petition, when it was a paper copy and I sent it to you guys, asked for a signature, an address, and then to know whether you were a renter or a homeowner. The renter or homeowner is nice, but it's optional. I don't really need that. What I need is the name and the address so that I can verify that your address falls within our area that we're considering. So if one of you would like to spearhead that, that would be great. Unfortunately, a petition is not something that I spearhead because I don't live in the neighborhood, but I'm more than happy to work with you to get that going. So anybody still listening or anybody that was on earlier, if you want to try to get that started, if you guys want to connect outside of this, great. Any last questions? Did I leave anything in
No, Melissa, this is Dennis again. I just wanted to thank you very much. You run a very good meeting.
I'm glad. This is a little rough. I normally am in the same room and we can have more of a conversation. So I'm glad that this Zoom meeting went okay.
No, you do really good.
So I will review this. I will follow up on a lot of these questions. If I have your emails and you had a specific question, I'll go ahead and reply to that. Otherwise, this is kind of just going to go in my NSP or my 96th Avenue file so that when we talk again, I can pull up answers to all your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that,
Thank you, Melissa.
have a good evening, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.